Good evening and welcome to the ATW's very first Friends of the ATW Zoom lecture. My name is Caroline Johnston. I'm convener of the Friends of the Australian Tapestry Workshop. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land from which we are zooming in from this evening. I pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians present. Let's just set the scene. I look like I'm at the workshop, but I'm not really. But let's pretend that we are all gathering there. We're looking at this beautiful tapestry by Naomi Hobson behind me. We're all talking to our wonderful weavers, and it might be Pam or Chris, Sue, Tim, Amy, Cheryl or Jen. And we're able to walk around and see all the samples and everything else is in weaving process at the moment. And now we ask you to take your seats, metaphorically speaking, and we're so pleased that you were able to join us tonight, and those from Melbourne and those from interstate and overseas. That is one of the real benefits of a Zoom lecture. Tonight you will hear from Emeritus Professor Valerie Kirk. We're so thrilled to have you here, Valerie, and Kevin as well. Valerie is a very highly regarded figure in contemporary tapestry and textiles. She's made a significant contribution as an artist and tapestry weaver, writer and teacher, both in Australia and overseas. She studied art and design at the Edinburgh College of Art, where she discovered woven tapestry. Aren't we fortunate? As a recent graduate, she came to Australia and worked in the Victorian, now obviously called the Australian Tapestry Workshop, travelled the country as well to teach in communities and colleges, work as an artist in residence, exhibit and lead community tapestry projects. Currently Emeritus Professor at the Australian National University School of Art and Design. Valerie has recently joined the Australian Tapestry Workshop Board of Directors, and her work, Floating Fossil, will be exhibited at the ATW from the 1st of December as part of the exhibition Make the World Again. I was fortunate to see this tapestry at the Here and Now exhibition in Bath, and it is truly a most beautiful tapestry. I'd also now like to introduce Dr. Kevin Murray, who's joining Valerie this evening. Dr. Kevin Murray is editor of Garland magazine. He was the director of Craft Victoria from 2000 to 2007, where he developed the Scarf Festival and the South Project, a 4-year program of exchange involving Melbourne, Wellington, Santiago and Johannesburg. He's curated many exhibitions, including Symmetry, Crafts Meet, Kindred Trades and Professions, Water Medicine, Precious Works for an Arid Continent, and others. And his books include Craft Unbound, Make the Common Precious and Place and Adornment, A History of Contemporary Jewellery in Australia and New Zealand. He was Australia's representative on the World Crafts Council from 2012 to 2020. Kevin is the curator of Make the World exhibition, Make the World Again, and the exhibition of 13 contemporary Australian textile artists who symbolically and materially bridge what divides us. Techniques such as tapestry weaving, embroidery, dyeing, screen printing and cloth weaving are employed to explore how textiles bind our world together, connecting humans and nature, settler and indigenous, migrant and host. Make the World Again had originally planned to travel to Canada to exhibit as part Craft Vancouver, but has been postponed due to COVID-19. We'll shortly begin and Valerie will speak. Now, if you'd like to ask a question during the talk, please send them through by clicking the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of the screen. We will try to answer as many of your questions as possible at the end of the lecture. Now, please join me in welcoming Emeritus Professor Valerie Kirk and Kevin Murray. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Caroline. It's great to be here. Great to be here in spirit, if not physically. I visited the workshop a few days ago. It was my first outing after 8 months of lockdown in Melbourne, and seeing the weavers at the loom was a sign that things were going back to normal. And it's great to see those tapestries emerging. Now, Valerie, we've known each other for many years. I used to drop in frequently to the textile workshop at the ANU School of Art, and I remember being profoundly impressed with the sort of knowledge and skill that you'd pass on to your students. And there must be generations of students who've come through your workshop with that kind of knowledge and skill and gone on to do wonderful things. So that used to always impress me, but also along the side, the energy of your life generally is quite impressive. The charity bike rides that you seem to be forever on, and also the outward, the outward nature of your curiosity about textile art. The number of times you're there in China, and particularly Laos, and the tours now that you're taking to those countries show a great interest in the world. So I'm sure there's lots to share. So without further ado, can you start by telling us about your background and how it is you came to be a tapestry weaver?
Thank you, Kevin. I thought I would start with a bit of background for people who don't know my history and go back to early days at art school, and then come straight forward and talk about some of my work in more recent years in commissions and community tapestry, and go on to talk about a career highlight before making some concluding remarks. I haven't done this kind of conversation before, so we're just winging it here and playing it as we go along. But thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It's really nice to think that I'm talking to you all out there in the community in Australia, and I know internationally. So thank you for joining us. So my journey started when I went to Edinburgh College of Art. I was there 1974 to 1978 doing the degree, and then went on in 1979 to do a postgraduate course. The tapestry department was a very special place. It was initiated by Sachs Shaw and Archie Brennan, who began teaching tapestry in the art school, which was highly unusual at that time. And through the Dovecot, they were engaging with contemporary artists. So the whole notion of tapestry as part of contemporary art really developed in that time before I attended art school. When I studied, looking back at it, I can see some very strong themes that were happening at that time. One of these themes would have to be conceptual art. I went from a country school to art school. I didn't actually know much about art, and we were thrown in at the deep end. Conceptual art was a really big thing of that time. Drawing was taught, and there was a lot of emphasis on drawing. And now it seems, I wonder about that, is that at odds with conceptual art, where generally people were not making objects or drawing or making two-dimensional works. But drawing was something we did every week, probably 2 classes a week. Sometimes life drawing, sometimes general observation drawing. But that was really emphasized as something very important. And I recently found a quote. I'd like to just go over this with you. In 1977, Robert Callender brought this idea of drawing in the tapestry department to people's attention through his introduction in the catalogue, a very important Scottish exhibition of tapestry called Loose Ends, Close Ties and Other Structures, The Way Ahead. In this essay, he wrote, "The realization of the importance of drawing made the subsequent progress possible. A more analytical approach towards drawing as a whole, combined with a genuine curiosity regarding structure, allowed tapestry to flower and produce images which are extremely potent." And I think this is something which is very important, that to make a tapestry, you actually have to have an idea, and then you have to be able to translate from whatever is in your mind into a tapestry. And drawing is a way which is very immediate, it's very accessible. You can work through ideas in a two-dimensional way very quickly. The other thing that I remember from the department is the wonderful materials store. There was the store cupboard that we could go into as students and basically help ourselves to any of the materials that were there. And looking back, it was an amazing collection. We had a fantastic rope works in Edinburgh called the Ross and Buckle Rope Works. It no longer exists. But from there, we had jute ropes, sisal ropes, cotton, tarred fishing line, hairy and heathered Scottish yarns, exotic imported fibers, animal hair. There was really a very wide range of materials that we could draw from. And we were basically encouraged to just explore materials, technique, and ideas. So I love this picture. It took me right back to being in the Tapestry Workshop in Edinburgh College of Art. It was a bit of a ramshackle place, looms and boxes and yarns and cartoons for tapestry, drawings and artworks. And this is where we worked day by day, learning about tapestry and moving through different projects. So at that time, it was a time when tapestry was very popular. It had gained an international reputation. People knew of Edinburgh, and through exhibitions, promotional activities, media, it was a very interesting and exciting time to study there. And I put in this picture, it's of course Prince Charles, and he was invited to the School of Art as an honorary guest. And I was invited to be presented to Prince Charles to show him the work in the tapestry department. And I think that's quite extraordinary of all the things they could have chosen from the art school. So I was given, he's presenting there, the piece of paper is His Royal Highness Prince Charles Award of Merit. So knowing about Prince Charles now, he's obviously interested in history and tradition. So it's no surprise that he came to the Tapestry Workshop in Australia. And following his visit, one of his beautiful watercolors was translated into tapestry. So he's shown that kind of ongoing interest. And putting these two pictures together, I wondered if when he came to Australia, he remembered that time in Edinburgh. After graduating, I was very fortunate to be invited to the Tapestry Workshop, then the Victorian Tapestry Workshop, to work on the tapestry that you see on the screen. A very large tapestry made from the small paintings that you see in the top left-hand screen. I was working with a team of weavers, and this was an incredibly steep learning curve for me. I was experimental, making up my own techniques at College of Art. And I come to a workshop where the approach to the tapestry has been worked out by the team of weavers who work on the samples. And we're all working and following that approach in the weaving. I had a lot to learn about technique. But the thing that I really loved in the workshop was working with the beautiful Australian wool in its hundreds of different hand-dyed colours. That was a pure joy. In Australia, I really enjoyed travelling around the country. I worked for the Crafts Council of Australia. I've worked in many remote places, teaching tapestries, doing residencies, and doing my own work. So this is a tapestry which was designed and woven after visiting Coober Pedy. And I often think, you know, I've probably travelled more of Australia than most Australians. I've been fortunate to go places that most people never get a chance to see. And that has been a really great source of inspiration to me here in Australia. We did an artist camp at Lake Mungo, and it was somewhere I'd heard about almost in mythical terms. I was so looking forward to that experience, and it really was a wonderful time working with other Australian artists and international peers. We have a fabulous network around the world of tapestry weavers. The other thing, which is a constant area of inspiration, is international travel. And through the textile tours that I do, the conferences that I attend, projects that I've been involved in, I have gone to many countries in the world and learned so much about tapestry and about weaving and other forms of textiles. I would have to say that my absolute favorite country to travel in is Laos, a country which many people really don't know about. But when I first went there, I met weavers who were absolutely passionate about what they did. It was the most important thing in their lives. And I really like the way that they're so connected to the work in a kind of spiritual way. There's a lovely saying in Laos, and it's about how when a person is sitting at the loom and they're weaving their dreams and aspirations into the piece of cloth. And I recognize something in that of what I do. When I'm at the loom, everything that I'm thinking about, everything internally, moves into the fabric that I'm weaving. And we have a lot of themed exhibitions. So particularly in Australia, we're lucky to have a very good community of people. And sometimes that idea of working to a theme really extends what you do. So not just doing what you would normally do. And here I'm showing work from a Networks Australia project, a group of textile and other artists who've come together and exhibited nationally and internationally. So here I was weaving the giant Mekong catfish, and it's woven as a shaped tapestry. And so here you see it on the loom. You see the bare warps around the fish, and that's really how it's constructed. You're only weaving the shape that you want to keep as the tapestry, and the other warps are cut away and finished to the back of the tapestry. And another way that I like to work that has developed over the years is about when you've been somewhere, you've had an experience, it's about relying on your memory and your intuition. So not just taking photographs and weaving photographs, not looking at something, observing and drawing, but working in a more direct way. And this is a way that I found I can process experience, travel, and ideas that I'm dealing with. And this set of small tapestries that I wove last year in a residency in Paris shows some of that returning to perhaps the kind of sensibilities of art school, the training that I had, working with different kinds of materials and working with texture on the loom. And so these were made while I was listening to the politics of Scotland. Should it become a country on its own? And should it be part of the EEC? All of that was going on. So it's trying to bring together ideas, materials, and the technique. And so as an artist, I constantly am making things, doing things. This is where it happens in the studio. I did this, it looks like there's an awful lot going on here because it's one of these panoramic photographs, but it shows you what I'm doing. I'm weaving at a loom, I'm drawing, I'm making things. And so work happens between different areas, all within the kind of art, tapestry, textile realm. Really it revolves around observation, drawing, working with materials, and the techniques, the woven techniques of tapestry. And I think they all come from that journey from art school through exploration, travel, and experience.
That's very interesting, Valerie, to start with drawing and the experience at art school, and to move then into your experience traveling and how the weaving process is something which helps you process the experience of travel related to drawing, which very much relates to a studio experience as an artist. But I note that in your career, you've also had some quite major commissions where people have tapped you on the shoulder and said, please, we'd like a tapestry on this particular theme. Would you like to speak to the role of commissions and how they've played a part in your career?
Yes, I have worked on a number of commissions. I think when I was in my 20s, commissions were very important as an income stream. As an artist trying to live from my artwork, making a commission work was a solid piece of income, rather than an exhibition piece where you couldn't guarantee that it was going to sell. So I did competitions. I worked for the Artists Agency in the north of England. I worked on a large number of commissions. And then I had a period when really I was doing a lot of teaching and keeping up my own work in the studio. So I wasn't going for commissions, I wasn't looking for commissions. But then at the Australian National University, there was this opportunity to weave a set of tapestries for University House at ANU. And this is a set of tapestries with a specific purpose. They're celebrating Nobel Prize winners associated with the university. So it's kind of like a hall of fame for the university. And they're marked by these tapestries. So initially there were 3 tapestries, which are all about Nobel Prizes in the sciences at ANU. But then once they were hung, there was a lot of discussion about Professor Frank Fenner, who everyone regarded so highly and said he should have won a Nobel Prize, but unfortunately he didn't. He won the Japan Prize, which is on a par. And so a private sponsor organized the commission with the university. And I wove this tapestry, and his work was all about smallpox and the eradication of smallpox worldwide. So here we have the tapestry and the cutting off ceremony. Later, Professor Brian Schmidt, who is now our Vice Chancellor at the university, won a Nobel Prize. He is well known as an astronomer, and he was awarded the prize for physics for the discovery of dark energy. And immediately that was announced, I got the phone call, and it was the next commission. Could I weave a tapestry about his work? So the design comes from amazing photographs from the Hubble telescope. And on the right in the image, the full image of the finished tapestry, it's as if you're looking right into deep space. When I was looking at these photographic images, the sense of perspective is incredible, the detail and the amount of information. So when I was weaving this as a very close translation from the photographs, I felt like I had to be making sure that every speck I could see, every mark that was there in the photograph was there in the tapestry. I didn't want someone in 10, 20, 50 years' time to come along and tell me I had missed something out. So that part is a very photographic image. And then that is set against a checkerboard pattern towards the top of the tapestry, which highlights 4 small images, which Brian told me were the key to them knowing that they were really onto something. They had the theory, but until they could prove this and have something tangible to show, it was not proven. And so with the very high level digital photography, they were able to do this. And so he showed me this little black and white images, but I knew that they were the key to this project, really. And across the tapestry, there's a red grid. The red grid is about the advancements in digital photography, the way 30 years ago we were making images with pixels and squares that were about 1 centimetre square. And now we don't even think about that kind of pixelated structure of an image. And then down the bottom, there's a sliver with equations. And this is, like Brian's mind, the equations, the thinking that he's doing, and the working out of the science. And this is just before we actually hang the tapestry at University House with Brian. And a very unusual, usually we don't see tapestry being handled like this. It's usually flat on the wall. But I think it gives you an idea of the scale and the kind of detail in the weaving of the tapestry. The next tapestry came when Professor Graham Farquhar won the Kyoto Prize. So this was a very different project. His work is all about plants and water. And of course, because of the environmental issues about food security, water security in Australia, his work has received a lot of acclaim, a lot of attention. And through this prize, he's been able to move on with a team coming after him and further develop all of this work. So this tapestry is really the finest and the most detailed of this series. When I wove the tapestry, I was thinking, why did I make it so complicated? It's made from a watercolor, because watercolor, of course, seemed the most appropriate medium to draw this project about water and plants. And then there are the details of the plants in the top of the tapestry, all the equations, which are part of his work, the slice through the leaf of the plant, and the red monitor, which they use in the lab. So it has a lot of things going on in this tapestry, and was indeed incredibly complicated to weave.
And what extraordinary works, Valerie. And I think we can talk a little later about what it means to render science in weaving, but it must be a unique role for someone to be like a weaver laureate to these great scientists. And obviously their pleasure in seeing their work rendered in this form is quite palpable. But as this slide that you've just put on indicates, weaving generally, as well as other textile arts, is also a very popular pursuit. And I'm interested to know how you might have engaged community in your work.
Yes, it is definitely a popular form of art. People really enjoy tapestry. I think it's because it's hands-on. The basic technique is not too difficult to learn. And then after that, it's what you do with it. So I'm looking here back at a project that I did on the bar tapestry. This was while I was still at art school. I did a residency in a remote village in Scotland called Bar in Ayrshire with Sue Carstairs, who you can see just behind the loom there. And we were working on looms, producing our own work. And there was such interest from the local village children. They'd come rushing along after school, come and look at what we were doing. And I can remember one little Scottish voice saying, "Can we have a go?" And I'm thinking, what a great idea. It'd be lovely to involve children in learning tapestry. So very spontaneously, really, we just set up a loom, warped it up, worked with the children on a design. They wanted to weave the local church. And we began the project at the beginning of the week. And by the end of the week, the whole tapestry was finished. So it was a very exciting, it was a very vibrant project to be involved in. In 2013, coming right up to recent times, I was involved in the Canberra Centenary Community Tapestry. And this was a project in our centenary year in Canberra, when we came together as a community to weave a tapestry for the community. Here you see weavers at the loom. We tried to involve as many people as possible coming in and working on the tapestry. Some people who had woven some tapestry before, but then we would have the Girl Guides group coming through, or the arts faculty office Thursday afternoon meeting coming through and putting a thread in the tapestry, or the centenary focus group would come and have their meeting with the tapestry, and we would talk and work on the tapestry. So it was really part tapestry education, sort of making sure that people in Canberra should all know about tapestry now. And also, I think, making something very special that we can own, that reflects back to us, our city.
Yes, it's very interesting, Valerie, as murals sometimes reflect the life of a community outdoors, the tapestries often reflect it indoors, whether it's in town halls or embassies and so on. So it's interesting to see that side of your work. But yes, we've got coming up now your significant commission, your work for the National Portrait Gallery, So Fine. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, this feels like my career highlight. I absolutely loved being part of this exhibition. It was a very long process from the beginning through the curatorial process, making work to the exhibition. But it gave me a chance to really grow and to put together a body, a significant body of work for this exhibition. When the curators had been to the studio and looked and selected work for the exhibition, they rang me up afterwards and said, "We know all your work is like self-portrait, but do you actually have something with a figure in it? Because we are the portraiture gallery." And just by coincidence, I had the photograph that you see on the right, just sitting on my table in the studio. And it's a photograph that I took traveling in South America. I looked to the side and I just saw my shadow on the rocks. And because of a crack or fissure in the rocks, it looked as if the figure had this massive walking stick. And I looked at it and went, this is me as a traveler. It's not well defined, it's fleeting and moving as a shadow. The stick suggests moving the traveler. So this became the beginning of the design. I worked with the photograph and adapted. I added in the St. Andrew's cross, thinking that my main movement is really between Scotland and Australia. And I did some adjusting on the tonal qualities and the image. So here you see on the right, the tapestry on the loom. It's woven as all tapestries are from the bottom up. But because of all the hachure in the tapestry, that's the very feathered lines that you see around the edge of the black shapes, I had to keep the bobbins across the loom all moving together. That's how hachure happens. And that kind of feathering around the shapes was to really emphasize the sense that the shape it's not solid, it's not static, it's moving. And it has this kind of ambiguous feel in space. And here you see, you can particularly see the hachure on the picture on the right around the head and upper body of the figure. And the way that it feels like the background is coming through the figure. I wanted something that looked like it was just floating in space. So was the background the sky? Was it rocks? It's an ambiguous kind of space. This is another part of the exhibition, which was painted slates. These slates are called wee Peggies. They were collected in Scotland. I picked them up out of the ground, washed them really thoroughly, and brought them back to Australia. At the time, just thinking that they were very beautiful small objects, not knowing what I was going to do with them. But as soon as I started painting on them with white gouache, in the patterns from Ayrshire needlework, or sometimes called Ayrshire lace, I just loved that contrast of the softness, suggestion of the fabric, and the cold, hard slate, the material it's painted on. There's something about this, I think, which is very Scottish. The kind of cold exterior and the soft heart, maybe, something like that. It was about that kind of contrast. working with the major gallery, I really appreciated all the work in terms of design and installation. So the works are really hung on the wall in a way that I haven't tried before. So all the tapestries come slightly out from the wall, and the traveller hangs with all its warp still on at the top and the bottom, out from the wall, attached to the floor and the ceiling. So it really makes the tapestry sit as an object, as do the slates when they're on wires that hold them just coming out from the wall. Here on the left, you see Ayrshire needlework christening gowns. They're something that I've drawn many times and looked at in collections, both in Scotland and here in Australia. But these christening robes came from the Embroiderers Guild of the ACT and the Powerhouse Museum. We were asked to choose an object to have in the exhibition with our work that would resonate and give people something else to think about in relation to our work. And so I chose the christening robes as something that I've looked at and drawn and investigated the pattern and history. But in the exhibition, I feel like they work as a beautiful counterpoint to the tapestry and slates, which are heavy and contrasting. So you have the very lightweight and light in colour christening robes, and the tapestries, which are heavy in material and sometimes heavy in that very dense black in some of the tapestries. And this pattern, a fragmented pattern, I drew at a time when I felt very conflicted about being in Australia and away from Scotland. And it was the idea of moving between the two places in my mind. And the salmon is another recurring theme. I think of the salmon as a symbol of travel. I grew up in a farm in Dumfriesshire, and every summer there'd be conversations about the salmon were swimming upstream, they were jumping at the waterfall, they were trying to get to the deep pools above the waterfall where they would spawn. So I think about the salmon as a motive of that kind of travel back and forward. I'll just make some general comments now to conclude. And these are just some kind of summing ups and things of general interest. Here you see the details of people looking at the exhibition. And tapestry, I think, is something that really people are drawn towards. I love there's a quote that I always think about to do with tapestry. Sue Walker, the first director of the Victorian Tapestry Workshop, said, "Tapestry has something unique to offer, not as an adaptation of something, but as an art form in its own right. Tapestry invites the senses, as well as the mind, to delight." I think that's the most beautiful phrase. And for me, that captures so much that I love about tapestry. For me, tapestry is really a continuing passion. It's something which is always captivating. It's always something new to learn, something new to explore. And it's the way that I can completely immerse myself in making art. I also like the way that French painter and tapestry designer Jean Leursat, he led the revival of tapestry in the 20th century. And a very well-known statement he made is talking about tapestry. Well, he said, "It is a coarse, vigorous, organic fabric. It is heavy with matter and heavy with meaning. But it is more. It is heavy with intentions. It is this which secures its magnificence." And through history, we've seen that many incredibly magnificent tapestries. And although we don't produce generally tapestries on that scale, certainly not as an individual weaver, I still feel that that kind of and special quality is there in tapestry. I think there's a kind of immersion in the process that gives the tapestry identity, not just of the material, but of everything that the weaver has embedded in the tapestry. Their skills, their ideas, sensibilities, aesthetic, thoughts, and ideas. I just think in our world now where we have so much that's throwaway, there's so much that's careless, there's so much that doesn't involve a lot of thought. I feel that tapestry endures and it has a new place deep in our hearts. These small tapestries are, to me, sum up what's possible in tapestry within a very small area, that we project and we immerse ourselves in the weaving. This is my tapestry, which is in the exhibition, which will open very soon at the Tapestry Workshop. The tapestry is Floating Fossil in the exhibition Make the World Again. It's an expression of our place in time, all that we do not know, and uncertainty. It acknowledges that we're part of a world far greater than our individual selves, a universe beyond our everyday lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie, for what a profound lecture and what an extraordinary life thus far. I notice in the So Fine exhibition how you're interested in tapestry not just as a picture of things, but also as an object. And it's quite remarkable how you're able to think about it in space, particularly when it's hanging from the warp, to give it that sense of motion in life.
The tapestry, the traveller, I had designed and hoped it would hang absolutely in space so that people would be able to walk around the tapestry as a three-dimensional object. But because of the constraints of space in the gallery, unfortunately, that wasn't possible. But I think hanging it out from the wall and having it hanging from the warps, it sort of keeps the integrity of the tapestry. It's complete. The warps were not cut away and finished off, sewn to the back of the tapestry. Everything is there.
Yeah, it gives a sense of its life.
Yes.
That you try and reflect. Now, I just remind everyone that there's the Q&A there if you'd like to put your questions for Valerie. I'm sure you have many, but I have certainly a burning question, which does relate to the Make the World Again exhibition, which, as you know, reflects the way in which when people try to imagine how the world began, how the world was created, many cultures see it as an act of weaving, that the world was woven together in some shape or form, and that how, in a sense, that reflects so much of weaving in Australia, not just in terms of the deep time, but also weaving different cultures together, settler, indigenous, and so on, that it's a constructive medium that has power. So I'm wondering, with this work, Floating Fossil, to what extent do you think weaving, tapestry weaving, as a medium can reflect the kind of deep time that a fossil presents us? Is there something about do you think, the process of weaving that is well suited to that?
I think so. That this work, the Floating Fossil, came from a series of work that I did after visiting the Age of Fishes Museum, which is in Canandra in New South Wales. And when I was at the museum, I'm fascinated by the distant past, our very, very long trajectory into history. So I was looking at hand-drawn diagrams, at specimens, actual fossils, at dioramas, which were there to suggest what things were like when these species were alive and swimming in ponds. And I did drawings and work from that depicting the fossils. But after some time, I came to the realization that it's not actually the fossils that really fascinate me as objects themselves. They're very dark brown lumps of stuff with the impressions in them. But what really fascinates me is the trying to imagine such a long time ago. How can we possibly ever know that time? We haven't the experience, we haven't the records, we only have the clues. So rather than trying to present something which maybe in a way is dishonest because it's never going to be incredibly accurate as to what that was, I was trying to create this sense of perspective, ideas of time, ideas of the fossil being incomplete, not all there. And so it's a picture which is the kind of thing that really fascinates me in my mind, is the kind of unknowing, not knowing. And really, tapestry is a perfect medium to do that. In tapestry, you can combine images, you can create this amazing sense of depth. When you have wool in dark colors close together, woven really densely, that really draws you into this space in the tapestry. And then with highlights and details, you can pull the viewer right forward again. So there are many ways that we can use tapestry to do things and tease out ideas and images.
Well, I've never thought of tapestry quite like that before, Valerie, in terms of the depth, the way you explain colour and so on. It's quite remarkable. And thank you. I think I've monopolized you long enough, and speaking of time, and I know there are many other questions that people have, so we should give over to that. Caroline, how are you going? Have you got some questions lined up?
Oh, we have, Kevin, thank you. And before we head to the questions, I think, Valerie, we could have listened to you for the whole night, really. Such wonderful, fascinating insights into your practice and all the different elements of it and the beautiful tapestries you've made. But I think that So Fine exhibition really showed such a mix of your work and pulling that together, that there was a wonderful quality about the combination and your explanation of that was, I suppose, embodies a lot of everything else you've done. So, and to Kevin also, your observations and insightful questions of Valerie, I think the two together, I think we've been really had such a treat tonight. So thank you both. And let's head to a few questions before we finish up. I have one here from Adrian. This is for Valerie. Did you find working collaboratively with other weavers like at the ATW or on your community projects enhanced or informed your own individual artistic practice? And what were, if any, the benefits of this way of working?
Yes, I think there's really quite a different dynamic when you're working with other people. You always have to tack with the people that you're working with. You can't just be inside your own head doing your own thing. I found when I first came to Australia and I was at the workshop, that was the thing that was very hard for me to deal with, because I had never worked really like that before. I enjoyed sitting weaving, but I was very conscious that I was trying to weave like the other weavers and make that work. In community tapestry, it's a different kind of space. And I often find when I'm working on community tapestries, I'm teaching and weaving and working with people in a way that's very interactive and a way that's very satisfying when you see how quickly people can learn and grasp what's happening in a tapestry. And the main thing about both of these areas, workshop tapestry where you're working on a large commission, and the community tapestry, where often the community is producing a large tapestry, is that teams of people can weave something much larger in a shorter time than any individual could possibly do. And there's something very exciting about that, the rate of the growth of the tapestry, the way that everyone's input comes together and makes something exceptional.
And a question here from Selma, who's from the Netherlands. Do you always work all by yourself? I think she's meaning this on your own tapestries, or do you have helpers?
No, I don't have helpers in my studio. I often wish I had a few elves that would come in at night and just weave up a bit of tapestry. But no, it's something I'm really aware of, having gone to some of the major events in China, where in China, a lot of the artists have their own designs made in the workshops in China for them. So they might say to me, they look at it kind of curiously, and then they say, "Did you weave it yourself?" And I say, "Yes, of course." And they go, "Oh," it's like, well, that's amazing, you know, that you can weave something yourself as an artist weaver.
I think your studio, together with the other works, really gave us some insight into the breadth of your interests and your making and creating, which was wonderful. And if you follow Valerie, you'll see what I mean on her Instagram. Another question from Cassie this time. What advice would you give to young weavers and those looking to get into tapestry weaving?
I would just say do lots of weaving. I think there's a thing about, you know, we a couple of years ago, everyone was talking about 10,000 hours. You need to practice. I think that that's so true for tapestry. I can teach people in classes the techniques, how to do it. I can do some design projects and look at composition and color and black and mine. And I can talk to people about their ideas and generating ideas to bring into the tapestry. But in a way, all of these things only come together when you actually make a tapestry, and you make another tapestry, and you think about what you've done and build on that.
Terrific, thank you. And we have one here from Mike, who said that it's very early in England. Thank you for a fascinating and absorbing talk. You showed some images of your work displayed openly and some behind glass. Do you have a preference, and what criteria do you use to choose?
Yes, so definitely I prefer to see tapestry without glass. Glass is a barrier between the viewer and the surface of the tapestry. But there are lots of times when museums have required that tapestry be behind glass so that it's protected. In Australia, people mainly worry about dust and insects. They are the things that people worry about. So if you have a tapestry in a closed frame, then hopefully there's not going to be any insect damage, and you can dust the top of the frame. So it's often for practical reasons that people put tapestry in frames. But the joy of tapestry is the beautiful surface of the weaving and being able to see that really clearly without glass, or worse still, the kind of glass that's slightly frosted, that's meant to not have reflection. I think that distorts the tapestry even more.
Yeah. And probably one last question, given the time, from Fran Alcock, who's in Victoria, I believe. Thank you for your stimulating, informative lecture. We've had lots of comments like that too. What have you learned from our own ATW weavers?
Oh, I have such admiration for the ATW weavers. Having spent a little bit of time weaving in the workshop, I think to commit yourself day after day, year after year, gaining so much experience in translating from contemporary art into tapestry is an amazing thing to do. I think some of the weavers who've really dedicated a large part of their life to the workshop have outstanding weaving skills. The high level of technical ability, but also the kind of sensitivity, the aesthetic, the visual quality that they bring to the weaving. I think I don't see that really anywhere else in the world. There's something very special about Australian tapestry.
Well, I think that is a wonderful way, not that we wish to end, but to end tonight. I'd like to thank Valerie, you again. Wonderful to have you. I'm sure we would have loved to have you in person, but it is terrific to have you, see your wonderful images on the screen and to have weavers and other interested people from around the world as also in Australia. I think that's a great thing to have. So thank you very much again. That's wonderful. And Kevin, we all look forward to seeing the exhibition, but thank you for your for being part of our discussion tonight. I think it has certainly helped dramatically to bring out some aspects of Valerie's work. We thank you very much. And before I say good night, just to remind everyone that the ATW is delighted to be exhibiting a selection of works from the Crafted Victoria Make the World Again exhibition. And that will be at the ATW from December the 1st to February the 26th. And we do hope that Kevin is able to take the exhibition to Canada in 2021. Kevin, we do wish you all the best, and yes, hope and pray for you as well. So please, those who can, feel free to join in at the ATW and visiting. Just check on the website for details, because there has been some numbers, checking on numbers coming in. So connect with the workshop if you're interested in coming in. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. It's been wonderful to have so many here tonight, and we wish you all a good night. And thank you again to Valerie and Kevin. And if you are all in there, you would join with a rousing applause for you both. And thank you. Really appreciate you being part of our evening tonight for everyone. And thanks, Josephine and the team at the ATW. Thank you all. Good night.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks,
Thank
Valerie.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Floating.